but we decided to have 26 paintings each. So we'd have 52 paintings, basically one for each week of the year, and just kind of document the seasons through our eyes and show the transitions here in the Midwest. And anyways, we both wrote up some labels, some narrative for each painting that's going to be posted, along with the label under the show. But thought it'd be kind of fun for you to be able to see the work that I had in here and just talk about them a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and start here with my series of fall paintings. And this is kind of very late summer, early fall. We had a long, dry summer, so trees started to change and the ground, the fields browned out a lot sooner than they normally do. And so this is, I usually take a long walk outside of Vermilion, and this is the little town that I live in here, Vermilion, and you can see the church steeple that you've all painted more than once at this point. But I like to take my 5-mile walks up the road and back, and we had such a long, hot, dry summer. And I don't know, it's kind of weird. I've painted this the church from along the main street, much closer from both different views. I've even painted from behind it. I painted it from this is kind of coming in from the west side into Vermilion, and I painted it from the east side looking towards town several times, and it just never struck me to paint this view of it until one day when I was walking back late in the afternoon. It was just such a hot day. I was just dying from my walk, and being able to see this and know that the end of the walk is near and I'm almost home. Kind of the home stretch is what I called this painting. And I love the shadows going across the road, and just the feeling of late afternoon sunlight streaming in and hitting some of these houses. So one of the things I wanted to point out is just the variety of handling of the trees. Some of them kind of soft, wet into wet, especially where they're merging with the buildings. And then obviously we've got some dry brush going on too, and the old fingernail scratch, scraping out some of the darker tree trunks from in front of the houses and stuff. But I really like this painting a lot. That was the thing of this show, and even just over the course of the year. Personally, I think I produced some of my best paintings, and it was just scenes that, I don't know, maybe I, for whatever reason, didn't really notice before, but being able to see them every day and just kind of document the change of the seasons and appreciate the surroundings a lot more. I've always kind of talked about finding the beauty in the ordinary, but I was able to really kind of put my money where my mouth was this past year and do a lot more of that and just kind of appreciate these simple scenes. So this is the beginning of fall for me. And then September here, the Vermilion River runs right through the north side of town here and up into Hastings where my studio is, and it just kind of joins up with the Mississippi River. It's a small river, but a great trout fishing river, actually. And because there's the water here in September, when the nights cool off and the days are still hot, we have a lot of really nice foggy mornings, and the bean fields are still they're just starting to turn from green to brown. But this is that view that I was talking about from the east side of Vermilion, where the sun's rising and hitting the church steeple in the morning. But just trying to work a lot wet into wet, trying to get the field to transition up into that blue wash, so that fog was painted at the same time as my sky, basically the same color and value. And then as it was starting to dry, I started dropping in some of the trees from the town and the lower parts of the building, and then obviously the upper parts of the field, and just slowly starting to merge it in, kind of going back and forth between the top part of the painting and the bottom part of the painting as things were drying enough to get a little more sharpness and definition in the bean field, and then up to the church steeple. Had to basically wait until things were almost dry to kind of finish off the church steeple in the end, to make sure that was nice and crisp. But I love despite the strong morning light, there was still a lot of softness in this scene. It was a really fun challenge. This one's called Cool Beans, by the way. My daughter Taylor, I don't know, that was just a saying that she's always had since like middle school. She likes them. She was like, cool beans. So that cooling fog, that's why I titled it that. And this one, the gravity box, the gravity feeder, these red bins are pretty common on farms. They just kind of fill them up with grain, and they have a door on the bottom of it, and it all just kind of comes down, and they're able to fill up cow feeders and stuff much easier that way and store them in these bins. And when I was a little kid, I grew up across the street from a farm, and they had these gravity feeders, and they'd park like 6 of them kind of next to each other behind the barn. And my brothers and my friends and I would all play tag in these things and jumping around and losing our footing and sliding down because there was a steep slope in there down to the bottom of them, and you're jumping from one to the other. It's amazing. None of us got concussions, probably a lot of bumps and bruises, but anyways, this is on Hannah's farm. We were painting there one day this fall, and you'll recognize it from that challenge I put out on the seasons. A lot of you posted that you recognize that barn. And this is just kind of walking back from the orchard in the back part of her farm. And just love the strong, warm light of fall streaking through on the field. But definitely the star of the show was that gravity feeder, because it brought back so many good memories of when I was a kid. You'll probably recognize this scene too. This is one of the module photos, and some of you have been tackling it, trying to really make sure we're getting that last autumn light on the burgundy trees and the really warm glow on that farmhouse as the sunset's hitting it, and a few just grazing cattle out there in the distance. And kind of a simple scene, but as you know by now, nothing's simple in watercolor. There's nothing easy about painting this. It's just a nice gradated wash for the sky, trying to drop in the trees wet into that sky a little bit, like I talk about a lot, so that the tops of them are soft and kind of merging in. They look alive, and then waiting for things to get dry enough to pop in the darker sides of the trees, the shadow sides, and do some dry brushing. But a lot of this was just trying to show, that beautiful last week of autumn, when the trees are all full of color, and it's not going to last much longer after that. This is called Autumn's Finale, and this one's called October Flurries, and this is what happens probably about 4 days after the last one here in Minnesota. It doesn't take long before the snow flies, and we've gotten 3 feet of snow on Halloween before, so we definitely can get snow in October. We didn't this year. It held off until kind of early mid-November, but it's not uncommon for us to see this kind of a scene, and the farmers are still out in the fields trying to harvest and get the crops down. That's what that little piece of farm machinery is out in the field, showing that things aren't done, their work isn't done, and it's already snowing. But I just loved all the muted gray colors in this scene. When you think of fall, you're always thinking of bright oranges and intense blue skies with all the fall foliage. But this is also a very common type of a scene in autumn up here, and it was very fun to paint. I love the shapes of the cows just kind of grazing and the little snowflakes floating down. It's a beautiful time of year. Then this one is called Cold Call, and very, very early November, when the mornings are definitely a lot frostier, and you wake up and walk around. I actually had to I have some gold gouache, and that was the little trick that I put in here for those grasses in the foreground. So there was obviously a lot of blue in that the shadow color of those grasses. It was just as the sun was coming up, so the morning sun's just hitting that last little bit of fall color there, and the moon's going down. But just, again, a lot of blues and neutrals to kind of give it that frosty coloring and a nice complement to the little patch of orange color. And then I came in with some gold gouache. I think that's also made by Holbein. It's called Pearl Gold or something. And I put that in for those little tufts of grass. And then the one bird chirping early in the morning. Hardy little birds we have up here. I don't know how they survived the winter, but they're up here all winter eating out of my bird feeder. But I like this one. This is a little bit bigger painting too. Again, it's called Cold Call. And then this is the end of November. Those skies that we get, you just know that snow's not far off, and fall is ending, and winter's arriving. So again, that just beautiful, really low autumn light on the fields. It's kind of unusual for me to tuck that farm way over on the left, but the shadow being cast from the farm was actually with more contrast with the buildings behind it, the white buildings up on the hill. So that's not right on the edge of the painting, and I just wanted to, it was kind of nice to tuck that over on the side to show that vast open field with nothing beyond it. Past the irrigator going across the field is just that big, vast, flat landscape here in the Midwest waiting for the snow to come. So that's my fall collection. And then winter, again, this is not far after the end of November, that last painting. This one's called Into the Great Wide Open. And my commentary on this one was basically that the plains are so flat out here, and you just kind of get used to it. But every once in a while, you just see this long view of the flat plains going off as far as the eye can see, and it still just kind of hits you how flat the landscape is here. And the title "Into the Great Wide Open" is a title of a Tom Petty song, and my best friend and college roommate passed away in November the previous year, and and he was a huge Tom Petty fan. We saw him in concert several times, and so I just kind of an homage to my good friend Todd when I saw this scene and titled it the same as a Tom Petty song. But I love, it's a winter scene, but look at all the color in there. I just love the way the snow looks in that shadow with the strong sunlight. This one is called The Wood Pile, and despite the fact that the wood pile is kind of the star of the show up there, and the contrast of the trees, I got the darkest part of the trees over the snow there to really kind of pop out that wood pile. But really what interested me in this scene and what I was challenged to paint was the fresh coating of snow in early December, one of the first snows on top of an earlier snow where there's some tracks from a vehicle, a truck going up there to stack the wood or whatever, a hunter going up in there and footprints and stuff, and then that fresh coating of snow. So they weren't real crisp tracks through the snow. They were just kind of soft with that little coating and dusting of snow on there. So it was a very fun challenge, and I liked this painting quite a bit too, despite its simplicity. It definitely wasn't easy. And this one is called Oak in a Snowstorm. And, boy, when some of those snowstorms that we get here where the snow is just so heavy, and the way I describe it is when you're walking around in them and the snow just kind of gathers on your eyelashes and your eyebrows and stuff, and you can barely even see because the snow is so thick and wet, and just beautiful. I love standing in snowstorms like that where you can almost hear the snow hitting the ground. And one of the things that when you're out there looking at the snow on these days, if you can keep your eyes open long enough, you notice that the snow, it's light just like anything else. It's light in front of a darker area, so the snowflakes, those big heavy wet snowflakes in front of the darker forest beyond it are lighter, but in front of a lighter sky, a brighter sky, they're actually darker than the sky. So just trying to show that impression of those big wet heavy snowflakes in a snowstorm, and the way the snow was gathering on the branches of the tree. I ended up using a little bit of gouache for that and for the spattering of snow down below. But again, kind of a simple composition, but I just wanted to highlight that one beautiful old oak tree with the bluebird feeders down below. And then those hoarfrost mornings that we get when you wake up and you look outside and all the snow and ice crystals is just clinging to the trees. That's a really tricky thing to paint too with watercolor, because the trees, they're covered with snow, but in a lot of ways they have a lot of color on them too. So when I was painting this scene, I was just driving around looking at these small towns. This is a little town called New Trier, just south of Vermilion, and noticing the fact that despite those trees were covered with snow and crystals, they were actually darker than the sky and some of the other snow-lit areas, snow-covered areas on the rooftops and stuff. So trying to drop that color in wet into wet to depict those frosty trees with just a few branches showing, and then still using them enough to be able to show the harder edges of the buildings and the rooftops and stuff. So it's just kind of a back and forth again. All the timing that it takes to work wet into wet when your sky is still up there, but hold off long enough so you get a hard edge down by the buildings and the rooftops. It's a real challenge. And again, this is an example of a scene people ask all the time, why do you put power poles and power lines and stuff in your paintings? But I don't know. I think in this case, they add a lot. I love the directional lines of the power lines coming in and out and the street lamps. And so it's just, it's a street, and a street without those street lamps is not the world that we live in. So I tend to put those kind of things in unless there's enough else going on. But in this case, I think it needed it. This is called Frosty Morning in New Trier, kind of the mid to late winter in February. And then this one, the commentary that I wrote about on this one was the fact that it was such a cold morning that the light, that low morning sunlight coming in was deceiving. When you're sitting in your car in your window, it looks like a nice day, but you walk outside and that air just kind of hits your lungs, and it's so cold. There's like ice crystals in the air, and that sunlight being filtered through all that atmosphere on a really cold morning was just so beautiful, not only in the sky, but the way it hit the hay bales, and that kind of combination on the hay bales of the warm sides of the hay as it's facing the sun, and then the cooler shadows away from the sun. Again, I think I probably just used raw sienna, a little bit of burnt sienna, and some cerulean and Payne's gray for this whole painting. But even though with the limited palette, I still look at it as a color-filled painting. I remember that morning very well still, to this day. That feeling of that warm sunlight kind of filtering through all the ice crystals in the sky, and just a few little dashes showing the plowed field in the foreground to kind of fill that in. Not trying not to overdo it, but just look at the little marks that I put in there. Some of them are a little bit softer, some of it darker, that I put in later. Trying to be really random in them and space them out unevenly, size them unevenly, have some darker, some more middle value, some a little bit lighter. That little bit of variety goes a long way. And then towards the end of winter, this is called Morning After a Wet Snow. Very common here in Minnesota, where it gets to March and everybody's all excited for spring, but winter is far from over. It just lingers and lingers, and those late winter snowstorms can really be a bear because it's warm enough and they just get so heavy and so wet. And when you're out there shoveling them, that snow is so heavy. They're called heart attack snowfalls because guys out in their driveways trying to shovel that stuff. It's so stressful. But it's almost half water and half snow as it comes down, and then as the sun's coming up, it's already starting to melt and go away. But there's that church steeple in Vermilion again from the main street. But one of the really fun parts about this one was working wet into wet down here on the street. To get all those soft transitions of the melting snow, and then waiting and coming back in after it was dry to put some of those darker reflections in to show the reflection of the church steeple and the trees down in those little bright patches. But again, a winter scene, but nothing's even close to white. The snow is like a value 6 blue in this instance because it's so strongly backlit. Nice complementary color scheme of the gold and kind of violety blues. That was my winter collection. And now into spring, all that snow starting to melt, and the fields, all the low points in the fields out here are just turn into temporary lakes, basically, with that quick snow melt that we get when it first starts to warm up, and things melt so fast they can't even absorb into the ground. So you do start to see these big lakes, and the geese are flying back and they're loving it. They're all out in the farm fields in these big lakes, and it's amazing how warm, at the end of summer, if you get a day like this where it's 35 degrees, you're freezing, but at the end of winter and it hits 35 and things are it feels so nice and warm. It's all relative. But I tried to show, despite the fact that it's all snow and, obviously cold, really cold water, snow melt, just trying to show the feeling that it actually did feel like a warm day. And that's where that warm light on the farmhouse and the barns, those warm reds, and even just the little patches of warm raw sienna and burnt sienna and the little tufts of grasses and crops starting to peek through on the fields and stuff really, I think, make a difference too. And hopefully it feels like a bit of a warm day. This one I called Rush Hour. There's a river just in western Wisconsin right across the border called the Rush River. And one morning I was heading out to find some painting subjects, and just kind of noticed as I was driving out early in the morning, the traffic coming into the Twin Cities was just crazy, and I'm heading out into the country in very little traffic. So I called this one Rush Hour, because not only because of the Rush River that it painted, but the fact that I was heading the opposite direction of all those poor saps heading and stuck in traffic heading to their office buildings. But just really love the light back here on the bend of the river. That glow as the morning sun was hitting that little patch of snow back there. Again, very colorful, warm painting, despite the fact that it's still, winter is obviously still lingering. Much less snow now, but trying to get dark enough with this patch of trees here along the riverbank to really pop the sunlight on the hill behind it. This one I called Transitions. Again, that view of Vermilion out across the fields from the east side of town looking west. But I just loved really tried to show the kind of sculptural quality of the snowbank here as it was melting away and slowly turning into the fields here and leaving little patches of cold water behind in the farm fields. This is definitely kind of the close to the end of winter here now. Not a lot of snow left, but I decided to title it Transitions because there are multiple transitions here. You're going from field to town, from winter to spring, from shadow to sunlight, from snow to field. So just thought that was a nice encapsulating title. I just that time of year, it's nice, it's beautiful. This one I just titled Spring. This is a big painting of mine. It's a big half sheet painting in the show, but this particular scene just kind of sums up the season of spring for me in so many ways. Going back to my childhood, I grew up kind of on the outskirts of a town, right on the edge of town. Kind of similar to this, although this is in the middle of Hastings, but you wouldn't know it from the way everything just kind of fades off from the houses. But when all that snow melted, the ditches would just fill with rushing water, and my brothers and I would go down there and make little toy boats and sail them down in the river in the ditches. And you're just excited for spring to come, and you can ride your bikes again and all that kind of stuff. So just between all the melting snow, the rushing water, the footprints that I put down in the snow to kind of represent children coming down to the water to play in the mud and the water like we did. The little smattering of geese on the edge there, showing the geese coming back in spring. The trees warming up, the driveways and roads starting to melt off all the snow. And even the colors of the houses were kind of like the little pastel colors of Easter candy in spring. So I just thought this was a very representative painting of springtime for me. This one's titled Spring Herd, and now most of the snow is gone. I wanted to get a couple of paintings with some animals in them, preferably in this show, and because it's such a big part of the farm life around here, obviously. And but this one, even though it's called Spring Herd and the cows are attracting most of the attention with the little stream kind of running through their pasture here, but it was really fun to paint that big old oak tree in the background and just kind of show the shadows being cast from branches and try and really, not be overly accurate, obviously, and detailed, but just kind of do justice to that tree and show the way the light and shadow fell across it as the sunlight was hitting it, and branches are casting shadows on the trunk and down across the landscape. Some of these little patches of snow in the background are just white gouache mixed with some cobalt blue to get some of that snow on there instead of trying to paint around them all. But even this tree in the background here, the little wispy branches, that bit of calligraphy, I just think that's so fun to paint those kinds of trees. This one I called Tillage, and again, very common sight here in spring. Now the farmers usually have to wait quite a while to get out in the fields with all the snow melt. The fields are just mud and waterlogged for a long time. So once they finally have a chance to dry out enough and the farmers can get out there and start preparing the fields for planting and their crops, but they're still under the risk of, obviously, with all the spring rain. The snow is gone, but wind and rain is a constant presence here in spring too. So just that life of a farmer trying to race against nature and get the crops in and prepare it. So, but I love all the little undulations in the field out here, the way the tractor is kind of askew down one slope, and the slopes just kind of keep going back and forth, one leaning this way, one leaning the other way, and then just kind of flattens out in the distance to the little farmhouse way back there. And then this one's kind of a pretty personal painting also, the very end of spring, heading into summer. And this tree is along the way to my studio from my house, and looking out here in the distance, the Mississippi River Valley is out here, and you're seeing way back across up towards the Twin Cities. But there's this beautiful, huge couple of trees here by this person's house, and there's been a bald eagle's nest up there for many years, and they're back there every year. And this year, right at the end of spring, our son informed us that he was looking for a house with his girlfriend. They were moving out, and it's just kind of one of those passages in life when all of a sudden your kids are gone, and for the first time when they say they're going home, it doesn't mean you're home. It's they have their own home. So I've never been one to look forward to the kids being gone, and so decided to paint that nest with a young eagle taking off into promising blue skies. But in a way, it was very poignant for me. I called this one Empty Nest. And then into summer, my least favorite time of year, but it is what it is, the heat and humidity. But I called this one Fertile Land, because as much as I complain about the heat and humidity, we are awfully blessed to live in an area where food is grown so readily, and it's so conducive to all these crops. I mean, you just drive across Wisconsin and Minnesota, and you just see things growing very well everywhere. So, but I tried to do a lot of this painting wet. It was such a hot, humid day already in June, early June, and the clouds, the sky is wet into wet, but the trees going back, I started dropping in almost the whole landscape before anything was dry. I wanted to show all that moisture in the air, the humidity, and again, how conducive it is to this farmland that we live in. And there's water, not just from the sky and the humidity, but water in the ground that we can use to irrigate our crops. So the more you hear about droughts and see all these horrible news of droughts and wildfires in places around the world, I guess we're lucky that we have the heat and humidity here. This one I called The Farmer. This is Hannah's dad, actually. Harley is his name, really cool guy. And I just thought this was such a perfect metaphor for a farmer, almost sprouting out of the ground himself, and just kind of standing there, and everything around him as far as the eye can see is green and growing, just kind of appreciating, inspecting all of his hard work starting to come up. Just kind of surrounded by all that green, representing his hard work, but then above it all, kind of an ominous, tumultuous sky to kind of represent the fact that so much of his work is you can control only so much, and you're still at the mercy of Mother Nature and what kind of a season you're going to have. So this is a full sheet painting. This is the biggest painting in the show. It was really tough to work on, and try not to a full sheet, and try not to get too involved with all the little thing. I mean, the garden that he's standing in had all these different kinds of plants growing, and the texture in the road. But I just had to use especially that sky, using a big brush and working really fast and trying to keep it, show the clouds in there, but still trying to keep it simple. Then this one is called Setting Over the Hill. The beauty of summer, I guess, with all those hot, humid days when you just hate being out in it, but it sure brings a lot of beautiful sunsets. And you've all seen some of the step-by-steps and attempted some of the sunsets that I've done before, and kind of talking about going from this yellow to orange to pink to violet and lavender up to blue, and dropping in those clouds wet into wet, the darker clouds into that sky so they fuzz a little bit, the backlit clouds. But doesn't take much more than that to make a nice painting of a sunset. Once you get that sky working, the main thing is just getting dark enough with this ground plane and the trees to really make the sky look bright. This was a painting that I'd done with Hannah down in Hay Creek, south of Red Wing. It's kind of a favorite spot, not just for Hannah and I, a bunch of our artist friends. We like to go down there. There's a cemetery behind this scene with a lot of nice big oak trees that you can stand under for shade, and a couple of nice farms where you can see where you set up in the shade and get out of the heat. And even behind us, facing the other direction, it kind of looks out onto some beautiful farmland. But just trying to treat this these it was kind of tricky with the barn being white and all the sheds being white. I was tempted to change one of them to red and just see what happened, but in the end I'm kind of glad I didn't. The kind of focuses on it was fun to have that wide variety of greens. I think I used almost every yellow and every blue on my palette to mix a variety of these greens, and then even throwing in some cadmium red into the pine tree here, because it was getting later in July. Like I said, we had a long, hot, dry summer, not a lot of rain, and things started drying off by then and turning red. And speaking of long, hot, dry summer, this one's called Crop Dust, and this is also along my walk down the road outside of Vermilion. I passed this big kind of community farm, and there's always people out there working with the small tractors and working by hand, tending their crops. And you just see these dust clouds going by the end of summer with the lack of rain as they're working out there. But really fun to try and capture that feeling of the dust and how it obliterated the trees right behind the tractor, working all wet into wet, kind of just bringing in the sky and those trees into that warm little raw sienna dust cloud, and then waiting till it's all dry, and then popping in the sharply defined tractor in front of it to really kind of finish off the illusion that it's all dusty behind it. And popping in those little figures, how simple they really are. You don't need a lot in there. They would have just taken too much attention away from the star of the show. And then last but not least, again, at the end of the day, painting with Hannah, we were in Frontenac State Park down by Red Wing, and a long, hot day once again. And towards the end of the day, we decided to try one more painting, and we kind of knew where the moon was going to come up, and we were both painting over a field, just waiting for the moon to come up and waiting for the moon to come up. And while we were there, it was starting to get a little cloudy and maybe a threat of rain. We weren't really sure, and it just wasn't happening. And so we packed up all of our materials and our easels and went back in the car, and it was starting to get dark anyways. And then sure enough, as soon as we got everything in the car, the moon made an appearance over the field. So Hannah actually really quickly grabbed her easel and set up her painting and just kind of dropped in the moon with oil paint real quick in about 5 minutes, and I just watched her do it. I didn't bother trying to lift it out of my painting or anything. But as I was driving back home from Frontenac, the moon just kept getting brighter and brighter and more beautiful, and I managed to find a little spot to pull off the highway by the railroad tracks and caught the moon kind of reflecting in the tracks themselves. So called this one Tracking the Moon, because we had spent so much time trying to figure out where it was going to come up and put it into our paintings. But again, just kind of that moisture in the air at the end of a long, hot, humid day. A lot of wet into wet in this painting, and then just trying to save a couple little spots of darker, more definition by the track, obviously, to pop out the sun or the sunlight, the moonlight in it, and then that little dark tree right underneath it. I came back and dry brushed that a little bit darker too at the end. So anyways, those are my 26 paintings for the show. I hope you enjoyed that. It was fun going through them with you. But it goes back to what I've been saying for quite a while now. Painting things that mean something to you goes a long way, and it was really enjoyable for me to not have to travel so much this year and paint my little corner of the world here around Vermilion. So I don't know if I mentioned it, but the title of our show is called Close to Home. So thanks, everyone. Hi, my name's Andy Evansen. Over the course of this year, I'll be discussing a lot of ways to improve your paintings with a focus on watercolor in particular. Watercolor is a popular medium, but there are technical issues that can become stumbling blocks during the learning process. The painting becomes a lot more fun once you solve them and can start refining your craft. I'll cover topics that are unique to watercolor, such as painting wet and wet, the timing and consistency of your washes, the importance of drawing and negative shape making, and more. I'll also be talking a lot about how vital it is to have a plan. Transparent nature of watercolor means you're limited in the amount of fixing you can do once you've started, and indecisiveness, that's what leads to the weak, muddy paintings. Because this course spans a calendar year, you'll be able to see me painting outdoors on location as well as in the studio. We can talk about the differences and similarities of both. I've taught dozens of 3 to 5 day workshops, and most of the time, just as students are starting to figure things out, it's time to say goodbye. This course through Tucson Art Academy Online allows me to work with you for an entire year, so we'll be able to get into things that just aren't possible in a 4-day workshop. As an artist who also loves to teach, I'm really excited about the possibilities of this. I hope you'll join me.